Let's start again. Mitzvah Kupsarites. Mitzvah Atesha v'sishim umeya. He shetzivonu lahashiv v'lahachzir hamashkon leba'alav ha'Yisraeli. So it's very clear in the Rambam that the mitzvah, if you have a mashkin, is only by Yisrael to return it be'ez tzok or elov. And by a non-Jew, there's no mitzvah. And l'chayr it's meduik in the pasuk like that. The pasuk says bereacho, kisashe bereacho, mashes mu'umo v'chulei hoshiv toshiv lo es ha'avoy kevoy hashemesh. Vom chavdalit pasuk yud and yud gimel. Mishnah Torah also. The Ram says, he says, Chaveroi, in Hilchos Mal V'Leiva, Perek Gimel, Alochehei, the Ram says, Echod HaMamashkin es Chaveroi bebezdin, O Shemishkenoi Biyodoi Bizroya. So he's talking about Chaveroi. Chaveroi is Yisrael. Then it continues, love. Im hoya hamashke mimashit star khilov bayoy kedoi kli malachtoi umaseu. It's something which he works with, he uses during the day. Yishiveu lo bayoy v'yim shekenu yimashkinen mashkineu balaylo v'im hoya mimashit star khilov balaylo. כמו הכסס והמכסה שישכב בוי, ישיבהו לו בלילו. וימשכנו ביום. לא שמחילתו, המחילתו, עד בוי השמש תשיבנו לו. עד בוי השמש תשיבנו לו, זו כסוס יום, שעתו מחזיר לו, so Ad Boy Hashemesh is talking about until Honei Tzachamo. So he should return it in the day. Sus Yom Shatamar Zeloi Kol Hayom. Sus Lailo Shatamar Zeloi Kol Halaylo Minayin Talmuloimo Hoshiv Toshiv Loi Esa Ovoi Kivo Hashemesh. That's Shkir. Mikan Omu Mimashkinin ksus yoim balaylo, or ksus laylo bayoim. And Kapach has in his Ksav Yad another line over here. Umachsin ksus yoim bayoim, or ksus laylo balaylo. And l'chayr, what he says is mistabel, because that's the mitzvah. Now, the interesting thing, l'chayra, is this mitzvah Aseh is a conglomerate of two different psukim. One pasuk that tells you to return those things which are needed in the day, at the beginning of the day, and those things that are needed at night, at the beginning of the night. And those are the two psukim. Im chovo, tachbo, salmas reecho, ad boi, ad shemes, tishivenu loi. That's in Mishpatim. Zuk sus yoim, shemachzir loi, terem onetzachamo. Hoshe tishivu es over, kavo hashemes, v'shocha b'salmosai. It's something which he's sleeping with. So she returned the shkir. And that's Kiseitse. Suksus Laila, Shemachzir Tem Shkisacham. Ukfa his boy. Bigmor Makis, She'omru, that the Matiki Ashmur said the following: Leisova el beisoi la'avoit avoitoi, which is an ashora. Who lavanit lasei? The Matiki Ashmur said that it's a lavanit lasei. Ushasei hu omroi hoshev toshiv lo es avoy. There's a lav leisovoi, and there's an aseh hoshev toshiv lo. Voloshin sifri hoshev toshiv lo es avoy. Melamed shemazal lo kli yoim beyoim ukli laila balaylo. Skus balaylo machrish bayim. Now, the Rambam has made a clear statement, and he said that this is found in Makis, and he says that the Gemara Makis Tezayin Manalev Sheomru Loisovu El Beis Sheomru Loisovu Beis Lavod Avoitoi Hu Lavadit Lasei, and the Aseh is Hosim Teshivu Lesavod. What the Gemara says in Makis Tezayin Manalev, the Gemara says, Mashkoin, the Rachmona Omar, Loisovo el Beisoi Lavoit Avoitoi, Hoshev Toshiv Loi Avoit Kivo Hashemesh. The Gemara basically says, and we'll see about this as time goes on, that there's no Malchus and there's a Lav and Aseh. But the term Lav Anitak Laseh is not found in the Gemara, at least in this case, and the Ram seems to say that it is found. So, l'cheira, the basis of all this is that lava nitak lasei is a raya that it's a mitzvah in minyan. And the truth is, the Rambam will use this many times. We'll go through the list, Mitzvah Hashem soon. And there's another raya that something is a minyan of mitzvahs v'lav shekod malaseh. It's also a raya because it's called malaseh. So it's a raya that's an aseh, a minyan of mitzvahs. The second one is not so obvious. The Ram says in minyan of mitzvahs in aseh ratio ches. He should tzivonu, tzivo, who should tzivo ha'ines loses es anusasoi. There's a mitzvah say for an oines to marry the anusasoi. V'omer yis'aleh v'loisia liisha tachas she'ino. Ukfa yizboye b'gmo makis shezeh halav shel oines שהוא לא יוכל לשלחו כל יומוב, הוא לא יסעשה שקודם יעשה. Because לכתחילה you're supposed to marry, and if you divorce, you violate a law, לא יוכל לשלחו כל יומוב, and there's an aseh to take her back. וכך נמנו וגומרו לא יסעשה שקודם עשה, לא יסעשה שקודם עשהו. It's a lav shekod maaseh, and the Ram says the minyan of mitzvahs. Also in lo yisaseh shin nun ches she is oinish or legarish and sosu omo lo yuchal shalchu kol yomo v'zeh alav kvar kod maaseh v'omroi v'lo yisiel liisha v'chein biru b'gmor makis. So there are two categories of interactions between lav and aseh that would tell you that there's an aseh in minyan mitzvahs. One is lav anitik aseh, and that the Ram Council points out over here. That's a raya that it's a aseh minyan mitzvahs. The Ram does it in many other places. In the mitzvah of Tmura in Aseh Pei Zayin, in the mitzvah of Sreifas Noisa, Aseh Tzadi Aleph, in the mitzvah of Anochas Teya, Aseh Kuf Chof, in the mitzvah Anochas Leket, Aseh Kuf Chof Aleph, in the mitzvah of Hashavas Gezela, Aseh Kuf Tzadi Dalet, and here in the mitzvah Lahashiv Hamashka in the Bible of Yisraeli, Beisol Koilo. And then he has a rishima of two other cases of Lav Shekodman Aseh, and it's also Raya that it's an Aseh in Mitzvahs, an Aseh Reish Yud Ches, as we said already, and an Aseh Reish Yud Tes, the Aseh Motzi Shemra, who din Motzi Shemra, Kloim Shivonu Lau Kaisai, U Shetishoye Ishtoi Imoy, Lefi Shebo Boy Gamkein, V'lo Yisiye Li Isho, V'lo Yuchal Shalcho L'Shalcho Kol Yomu, Kva Izboy Mo Makis Gamkein B'lav Zeh Kmo Shizboy B'Oinei Skotz Eloima Shezeh Lav Shekod Maseh, and that's a raya that it's a mitzvah in Mitzvahs. Okay, so that's what we have. So that sounds very simple and a priori like nothing's going on over here. It's a very simple thing. The Rambam does this many times in Mitzvahs. He quotes a lot of Aseh that it's a raya, that it's an Aseh because Litan Aseh. And also he has another klal, Lav Shekod Maseh, which he also quotes twice. The problem over here is that what seems to be that the Ram didn't say anything. He says he a priori said a lot more than I personally can swallow, because there's no such Gemara in Makis. The Ram says, "Vayis boy Gemara Makis she'omu lo'isover el beisoi lavod avoitu lav tanitu lasei." There's no such Gemara that I know of. And the Rambam does the same thing in the mitzvah of Hashavas Gzela. He says over there in Mitzvah Aseh Kuf Tzadi Dalet, he writes Kfar Be'eru Meseches Makis Shelav de Gezel Hu Lav Shenitu Lasei V'yomu Rachmona V'omru Chazal in Makis Rachmona Omer Sigzel V'Heshes Gzela Shagozel. These two Gemaras are back to back, but Heshes Gzela Shagozel and also Hashavas Avoid. So, just to make it simple, if you recall, the Ram says in Shorish Vov, when he talks about Lavan Ditul Aseh, he says that the Aseh came b'miyuchot l'natek es alav. V'im shi'eh alav koidem v'ach kach yinotek l'aseh. The lav is logically before, and the Aseh comes to the Menatkoy. So if that's the pshat, then there's a very odd thing going on here. Because I understand in Gzela that it works out like that, because in Gzela, you buy the lav of Gezel, and there's a Veshva Gzela Shagoza. But when it comes to Hashavas Avoit, the mitzvah of Hashavas Avoit is completely independent of the lav. You can violate the lav and you can have it Aseh without the lav, and the lav, and you can have the Aseh without the lav or with the lav. The Rambam has, for example, there are two ways you can mishkan l'shloi bebezdin. Oh, sheshliach bezdin nichnas lebeso. There's a lav. In Hilchos Mal V'Leiva, Perek Gimel Locha Dalet. Amavis Chaveiroi, Echad Oni v'Echad Oshia, Lo Yimashkenenu, Ela bebezdin. Vafilu shlich bezdin, shebo lemashken, lo yikonis lebeisoi, shlich lo yikonis lebeisoi, yimshekenu, elo yimashkenu, elo oime bachutz, v'aloiva nichnas lebeisoi, umotzi lo yamashken, shnev bachutz tamoy. That's beheter. Beisa is a shlich bezdin goes inside, or if the Baal is motzi also, if the Malva finds him in the shuk and takes him al kochai. But there's an Aseh, even if the shlich bezdin is mishkenu beheter, or the loiva gave it to him. The Ram says in Perek Gimel Halacha Hey, Echad hamemashkin es chaveiro bebezdin, o shemishkenu beyodo bizroya, o midas haloiva. So sometimes he violates the law and sometimes he doesn't. Imish only who umishkenenu dovashutzoch loy harizo harize mitzuva laharzeloi ho'ovot be'eshutzoch loy mazloy esakar b'laylo kedei lishon olov ve'samachisha b'yoyim kilasis bo malachtoi shenema choshev toshiv v'sa'ovoi. So it's very clear that the Aseh here, even if it's not logically bo the Nasik as a lav, because you can have the Aseh without the lav b'chlal. So what I want to claim over here, that you can talk about lav anita glase. This, well, it took me a while to get this. In the frame of reference of Shiur Shishi, and we'll have to see exactly what the Ram is talking about there. And mashkin would not fit the categories, the definition of lav anita glase in Shiur Shishi. However, it sounds offhand a little bit odd. It still is a lav anita glase. The kitzah is Shiur Shishi requires that the lav is miyuchad said. The Aseh was miyuchad, explicitly said for the lav on one hand, and for lav anita glase, you might not need that. The fact that you violate a lav and the Aseh comes to tell you to give to relinquish the mashkin, that's enough to be a lav anita glase, to be pater for malchus. And see, the truth is, all the Gemara said is that there's a ptur malchus in mashkin. So logically, all you need is kimu v'lo kimu, and kimu v'lo kimu means the kiyum aseh. So if you have a case of lav shekol ben aseh, the aseh was before. And here, where you violate lav, and then there's an aseh to give it back, you can call it lav anita glase, but it's not lav anita glase in the way that he's talking about Shiur Shishi, that it's boba miyuchad to menatek the lav. But since it is menatek the lav, that's enough to pater for malchus, because in the Gemara, all is necessary kimu lo kimu, and the Gemara throws everything together, and we'll see about that, Mitzvah Shem, both oines and all these other cases. And the pshat is that the idea of Shiur Shishi is completely different than what's going on over here. The Rambam in Shiur Shishi is coming against Rav Sadi Gaon. Rav Sadi Gaon has an amazing statement, and he doesn't mention it by name. He actually says, you can't imagine someone disagreeing with what I said, but he doesn't mention Rav Sadi Gaon. He says like this. He says, let me read you a few cases. V'oimer, and this is a Chasimus Sefer, this is on page 245. This is like the epilogue. V'oimer, shehalav kasher bo me'etz Hashem legabi ma'asim musiyomim, legabi specific acts. There's a prohibition. Kegoyim hamalocha b'yom haShabbos, v'achilas hachometz b'Pesach, v'abiyah al ha'ochos, hari sheloi nichlal b'chlal zeh harigis misha'asaloi, v'chulei. And then he says, v'kivan. Now what do you want? V'kivan shegam tzivuya lecho matzah, eino isa achilas chometz. If the isa of achilas chometz and the mitzvah achilas matzah will be synonymous, then it might be one mitzvah. And we'll see it will be one mitzvah. Ki efshe sheyochal shneim ke'echad. You can have something called matzik and something called chometz. Ve'ein isur legabe chometz tzivu al achilas matzah. Ki hu yochol le'ochol dvorim acherim bilvadom hechshavti os shtei mitzvahs. If the Aseh and the lois Aseh is the mirror image of each other, then it's counted as one. If you could imagine the Aseh and lois Aseh in two different areas, then it's two mitzvahs. And therefore he says, V'kivet shehet lecho bal chayim hama alageu v'sheisei shesa hu ho'isa alma she'eno ma'alagera the Aseh and the lois Aseh v'eno sheisei shesa hechshavnu es shtei mitzvachas. The reason why the Aseh of Malagera and the lois Aseh are not two separate mitzvahs in minyan mitzvahs against the Rambam because they're the mirror image of each other. What the Rambam in Shiur Shishi wants to tell us that there are three cases of mirror images that Rav Sadi Gaon, you could have imagined that he would count as two mitzvahs, as one mitzvah, but the Rambam says, I count it as one. One of them is the mitzvah of Shvisa from Shabbos and Yisa Malocha, or Inu Yom Kippur and the love of Achila, or Yontif, Shvisa or Shvius. That's one category. The other category, when the lav and the Aseh bon miyuchat, that the Aseh is an Aseh to marry the onus, and the lav is not to divorce her, specifically each one for the other one. And then if she divorces her, there's an Aseh, the Aseh continues to bring her back. It's Aseh called malav. You can imagine, according to Sadia, it should be one. Comes around that it's two. And then he says also lava nitel aseh. You understand yourself that the lava nitel aseh, he's talking out like Shiur HaKan, that before you start, there's no aseh. There's a lav, and if you violate the lav, there's an aseh shalach to shalech. They're the mirror image of each other. So then you could imagine that it's one mitzvah, minyan of mitzvahs. Comes the Rambam in Shiur Shishi, says the three categories of mirror images is all one mitzvah. What you could have imagined as one mitzvah, you count the Aseh separately and the Lois Aseh separately. However, Hashavas Avoid might be a lav shenita l'aseh that there's no malchus. But the Aseh and the lav are not the mirror image of each other. The Aseh goes beyond the pale of the lav. The Aseh is even if you didn't violate the lav. So there it's a double portion, even according to Sadiq going, that it should be 2 mitzvahs. And that's not the issue of Shiur Shishi. He defines lav anita l'aseh in the very parochial sense, that it's a very limited sense, only because he's trying to make a point that even though they're the mirror image of each other, it's 2 mitzvahs. However, when it comes to minyan mitzvahs of lav anita l'aseh, it doesn't make a difference if it's the parochial lav anita l'aseh of Shiur Shishi, or it's the broader case where any time that the bin aseh that we're not the lav is irrelevant. She saw in the Gemara in Makis that it was kimul or kimoy, that there is a kiyum aseh. He asked himself, which category should this be in? Either it's in the category of lav kodmo, aseh kom lav, or lav nit laseh. So if you ask yourself which category it's in, it's certainly lav nit laseh. But Rabbi says it's not the lav nit laseh of Shiur Shishi because there's no havamin over here that it should be 1 mitzvah. When I realized that, I said to myself, this is a double. I didn't say anything. It's just a double portion. There's absolutely nothing. The oddity is Rav Sadi going in Perek Vov. This is just an aside. It's out of the purview what we're doing on page 55 here. Yeah. It's Perek Vov. Hashmona Esrei, the 18th mitzvah in Perek Vov is like this. Chiv esmi shemishkein beged shel oni lahachzir loi oisoi b'shor sheyesh tzorach boy. You have to return a mashkin when it's needed. B'laylo b'yoyim k'fi she'omar im chovel tachbol salmas recho ad bo Hashem b'tishivenu lo. So I'm very unclear over here what exactly happened because he doesn't quote a lav. And so you could imagine that you're not allowed to take salmas reach under any circumstance. And he has another case of malbush almona l'sachbol beged almona and lo yachbol echaim v'rechev, which is also, so those cases I can imagine it's always be'isa. So the aseh and the lois aseh could be a mirror image of each other. But the aseh, the lav of taking an avoid and the mitzvah to return, which he doesn't quote here, you see, no, maybe I'm wrong. One second. He's talking, Salmas Reacho is an Oni. So l'cheira, it's not lav dafka Salma, it happens to be mentioned Salma l'teira, but in volume it's an avoid. So l'cheira, there's a lav. And to have Sadi going doesn't count the lav. And here I would imagine you should have counted the lav, because here, even according to Chsimas HaSefer, it should have been lav. That's an internal problem of Sadi going. But I think what I said in the Rambam is correct in Shiur Shishi, and in the broader sense of lav and laseh, which nothing to do with Shiur Shishi, returning a mashkin is part of it. Is a mitzvah, mitzvahs, because we see that it's a lav and laseh, even though it's not a mirror of the lav. Now, I don't want to get into this now. You should just know, you look at the sugya in Makis, the Gemara starts out that the lav adikla is very parochial. It wouldn't include lav shekom lasei, and in the middle of this discussion, and that you have you're not loyke for oinus, the Gemara introduces mashkin and gzela. You look at the sugya, but I think if you look back at the sugya there in Makis, it's from Yudalit to Zion, whatever, and you look over here, I think things. I think I pretty much taken care of what we need for the Rambam over here. I hope. Interesting. The Rambam goes a step further, but he doesn't talk about it here. We know there's a lav nitel aseh, according to the Rambam, by the law of taking the avot, and they shouldn't come into B'tech Beisa, we shouldn't take B'choska, and there's an Aseh of Hashavas Avot. The Rambam has two other cases of lav and nitel aseh for this same Aseh. There's a Lois Aseh Reish Mem Aleph. He she's hilnu so lemashkin almona bein aniya bein ashira. There's a lot of beged almona. And loisase reish mem beis. He shizono mechabo. That's to take a mashkin of kalim shoysim behem b'nei odam achonis mizosayim. Kalim which are used to prepare meals. Gon klei atchina. Uklei alisha, uklei abisha, uklei shchitas habehema. Habehema is v'zula seh mashi kapselu shom dova shoisim boyechol nefesh. So it means the kalim which you prepare, okay, and you have to return them. And the lav, we see there's a lav of leyachbol oechaim b'rechev ki nefesh uchoyver ukesheova umishkein yilke. Yilkach mimenu v'yushav le'uman. V'im ovad oy nisraf koidem sheyeshivenu loike v'chein hadin bebeged almon. So the Rambam explicitly says in HaMitzvos in Reish Mem Beis that Mitzvas say Reish Mem Aleph and Reish Mem Beis is nita klasei, because he says v'yoshiv yushav l'uman v'im ovad oinisof kolim shivenu loike v'chein adin bebeged almon. He doesn't talk about lav and klasei because he's not trying to prove the mitzvah say over here. He's trying to prove that there's a lav, and excuse me, he's trying to prove that there's malchus except when you have, as long as you have the option of the kiyum aseh. So what aseh are we talking about? There's no other aseh except hashavas ovod. And the Rambam has the same thing in Mishnah Torah, basically. It doesn't say it explicitly, but if you look in Uchas Malvoleva, this is our aseh. Perek Gimel of Malvoleva, Loch Aleph and Beis, Almona Ben Shoyaniya, Ben Shoyashira, Ein Memashkin Oisa, Lo B'Shas Halvo, Lo Yishlo B'Shas Halvo, Lo Al Pi Bezdin. There's no circumstance you're allowed to take a mashinemo, like Sachbo Beged Almona. V'im Choval, Machzirin Mimenu, Bal Kochot. And then I'm skipping a little bit. Over Hamashkain, Oinis of Kolim Shiarze, like it. So why in the world should she be like it? That's what he says. V'chein amalves chaveroi. Lo chabeis. V'chulei lo yachbo kelim shoyse b'moichol nefesh. V'chulei shnemo ki nefesh hu chover. V'im chovar marzir bal kocho v'im over amashkrin oy nisa kol shiarze like it. Only if it's never. So comes Chuvas Rivosh in Siman Tov Peiches. He says, "Shouts to Chuvas Rivosh, u'mashe kosav over in Yisrof kolim shiyaz eloikehu shedaitos lao shelav ze nitik lasei v'yesh loy takona b'chazoro v'chol zman shamashkin hu ben ef shelachziro ein eloike v'im nisraf oy nevad she'ef sheb'chazoro oz eloike kamush muski in ze b'makis b'lav nitik lasei." This is a posher lav nitik lasei, as the Ram says also in Sefer Mitzvas. So this Aseh is in 3 different cases. It's the lav of the kichas avoit, b'choska, or shlich bezin going into the house. It's a lav of beged almona, and the lav of v'chayim v'lachav, klei kelim yimechin oichel. So it's interesting. It's true. But the Rambam over here in this mitzvah doesn't quote there's a lav in the klasei by Chaim Rocha. He doesn't quote it also by Beged Almona. So the answer is, Rabbi say, it's nothing to do with over here. We're not interested in the mitzvah say of Hashavas Avoid that there is Malkus and not Malkus in all different cases. If we are interested, that's only in the lav, Reish Mem Aleph, Reish Mem Beis, but not here. Here we're interested in trying to prove it's mitzvah say. So if you find the lashon in the Gemara that there's a lav and there's a nitak for aseh, whether it's kimul or kimul, whatever it is, it's a rayah tachtas and aseh for Hashavas Avoid. But you don't find such a lashon in the Gemara by Beged Almona or by Rechaim Rochev. So even though it happens to the Lavan, say the Ram can't quote that the Matiki Ashmur said that it's a Lavan Diklasei, it's a Aydach Mitzvah Minyan Mitzvahs. He can only do it by the lav of taking an avoid b'choska, either shliach bezin coming to the house or finding the love in the street, and that's the Gemara Makis. The other case is true. It is a lav like say, but there's no Gemara about it. So you can't say what you think is mistaber is a rayah that it's a mitzvah. The Ram doesn't quote it. Okay. So now that we have this, let's go on the next step. If you recall, we said that by Peah, Leket, Peret, Noilois, the Torah says Tazoi V'Som, one word, and it refers to 4 different lavim. And we say that this one word is not one mitzvah in Minyan Mitzvahs, but 4. And we suggested, maybe it is that Lavanit Lasei requires an Aseh Miyuchad. And therefore you have a separate Aseh for this, for Peah, for Leket, Peret, and Oilers. But then, Rabbi Isai, you ask yourself the question, the Aseh of Hashavas Avoid is Menatik the Lav from Shliach Bezdin taking the Avoid Bal Kochoy, the Lav of Chavod Bebeged Almona, and the Lav of Chaim Lochev. So maybe you should count this Aseh, which the Ram counts over here as 1. Maybe you should count as 3. And that's what the common sense would dictate. So I want to tell you something. I think this whole idea is fallacious. It's not the reason why let's start like this. The Pasuk says, "Uvekutzachem es kitzir artzachem lo yischala pasot lekso v'lekitzir lo yisalake v'cham lo yisailo ופרד kam choloi salakin, lo oni velazge taziv oisom. The oisom is an indefinite pronoun reference. What does it refer to? It refers to payer. It refers to leket. It refers to payer. It refers to olos. This says taziv oisom, and in pshuto shomiko, it goes on each one individually. So if you say each one is a lavadik laseh, so memela, it should be a separate mitzvah. And that's the Ram says in Minyan HaKotzer, lefi shebechol elu nemar bechol elu, each one of them lo nevaget tazer v'som v'zu mitzaseh shelahem. And here in Hashavas Avoid, which the posik and Hashavas Avoid, it goes like this. The Torah says, "Loi sach lachbo rechayim v'rechev ki nefesh hu choyvel v'chulei." That's Chavdalit posik vov. Chavdalit posik yud yud gimel ki sashe b'recho mashes mumo loi sober beisoy lavar avoitoi. That's another lav. B'chutz tamuid v'yisha she'ata noishe boy yoytze leches avod achutza. So you shouldn't do X, and you're allowed to do Y. V'imish onihu loy sishka ba'avoitoi. Hoshiv toshiv lo es aboy kivo Hashemes v'shocha b'salmosoi. That is posik yud yud gimel. Then yud zayin lo isate mishpat ge'er yosom v'lo isachbo beged almona. So you cannot say here the pshuto shel mikra. First of all, it said b'loshen rabim, that this pasuk refers to this lav and that lav, and the pasuk was said on this one and that one that you don't have over here. It's just that you have a clear aseh, which logically can be applied to the other two. So he says lav nikla aseh. The reason why the separate aseh is in taziv, so it's not because lav nikla aseh is mechayim. Otherwise, it would be over here also. But the pshat is in pshuto shel mikra, and in svara, the aseh was said here, here, and here. You see in the pasuk that tazav goes on this one. That's why it's tazav esom. Here, in the case of Hashavas Avoid, you don't see that the pasuk goes on beged almona or on vechayim v'lochev. You only say misvara, that since you have to be meishav and avoid when it's tzarich, so you apply this over here also. But there's nothing in the posik that presents itself in Torah Shebiksav that this posik was said as a separate aseh. It's only in the case of Matan Zaniyim. So that's why the Ram counts it as one aseh. That's what I would tell you. We're not out of the woods yet. Okay. Here is one kasha which I was banging my head about, and until I realized I don't think it's a question that much. And I think the Achronim also, whatever, but start like this. Let's go like this now. In Hilchos Malbuleva, in Perek Gimel Alocha Daled and Hey, Hamalbas Chaveiro Echad Oni v'Echad Osher Lo Yimshechenu Yimashkenenu Lo Yimashkenenu El Bebezin Ovar Balchoy v'Nichnas Lebeis Haloiva Umishkenoi O Shechotav Hamashken B'Yodo B'Zroya. divided love. Beyond Israel. No, or he didn't violate. Beyond Israel, he violated. Oh, midas haloiva, without a love. Im ish onihu umishkanoi dover shuhu tzorach loy harize mitzuva laharze loy. Ovoy be'eshu tzorach loy marzel loyes ovoy marzel loyes akar balayla k'dei lishon bot belov v'yes hamachrisha v'yoyim k'dei lasis bo melochta. So the Aseh is no hegis only in Oni. But the Ashara is bein ba'oni, bein ba'aseh. So comes the Mishnah Melech and he asks the kasha that l'chayra, if it's an Oni, he shouldn't get Malchus. But if it's an Asher, he should get Malchus. And then he says further, Adrabah, even by an Oni you should get Malchus. Because we learned from Tmura that since the Aseh includes things which a Lav doesn't include, there's no Lav in the Aseh B'chlal. And that's the Ram in Tmura, in Perik Aleph Aloch Aleph. See, he says, not only should there be Malchus by Oshir, there should even be Malchus by Oni, because it's not allowed until the say B'chlal. Because Tmura is not allowed until the say, because you find the lav of Tmura by Shutuf and Sibur, as the Rambam says in Perik Aleph, Aloch Aleph, and there's no Aseh. We don't say, well, you smosi a kodesh. And it's not nitak b'chlal. Even in the case where there is a nitak, which is not sibur and not shutuf, a push of the tmur. So how does the Ram say that's a lav nitla? So Minchas Chinuch in Lamed Ches, Ois Aleph, quoted Tumim in Sadi Zayin, that says that really it's different over here because Tmura is Memele and Ashavas Ovot is a Maisa, and it's you do a Maisa, so you'd have a Diklaseh, even though it's not synonymous with the law. This is not clear that there's a tremendous merit for this teretz. And, it's not clear that the maybe the Aseh of Tmura is the person to be noyek, to just Tmura. The question is, the Ram says to do something. That's Pash the mitzvah. But even forgetting about that, the Ram says, if the ovoid is nisraf or nevad, you do get malchus. Okay? So that's Oni. And what about Oshir? The Ram's mashma is no malchus in general. So what's the case by Oshir? How is it that by Oni, that if it's Kayim, you don't get malchus, and if it's lost, you do get malchus, and by Oshir you don't get malchus? It doesn't make any sense. So come a different tumim, and I think this is the real answer. You see, in Tmura, Tzibur and Shutuf is mufka from the Aseh. You can't imagine an Aseh in Tzibur because there's no voyah to Asali HaKodesh. So since you can't imagine it, so Mamela, there's no lav in Aseh B'chlal. It's not menatik lav, it's only menatik chelik of the lav. So it's not menatik anything. if you take the over for an osher, is that the osher is mufka for nashova, or since he has money, there's no chiyuv at the moment. But let's say Lu Yitzur, the osher would become an oni. So you're to give it back to him. So it's not that the osher is mufka, it's just that there's no chiyuv. So if Lu Yitzur, the mashke, is nisra for nevad, you certainly be chayiv malchus, because there's no possibility of kimo v'lekimot. But the fact you don't have to have behechetimsa now to have to return it to him, as long as the possibility of kimo mitzvah exists, there's no malchus. In Oshir, the possibility always exists because he coming on it, unless the mashkin is never an ischaf. So then, really, the kasha doesn't start, because in Tmura, part of the lav is mufkuf and Aseh. In here, there's no afkar. It's just at the moment there's no chiyuv. So Mela, there's no problem. Now, there's something very interesting and strange about here, that even more, that not only is this asay of Ashavas Avoit understood in terms of Lav Medikal Asay explicitly over here in the mitzvah, and in two other lavim not mentioned here, but mentioned in Lois Reish Mem Aleph and Reish Mem Beis. There's another case. There's another relationship between Lav and Asay over here, because the Asay is Hoshib Toshib Loyes Avoid Kvo Hashemish, okay? But there's also an Ashora. V'im ish onihu loisishka ba'avoita. So it's besides the lava nital asay, there's another relationship between the lois asay, between a different lois asay of shchiva be'avoitoi and an asay. So I'm not sure if this comes under Shiur Shishi of lav asay v'dova echod, or maybe it could be under the case im yeh maisim and amaisim. Mitzvah say, which is the first case, or you violate the lav only with the kiyum or say b'sefer halayla. This approach, in other words, you have a an avoid to keep during the day, and you're supposed to give it back at the beginning of the night to sleep with it. And however, if he sleeps with it the whole night, he violates the lav. But the asay is immediately at the beginning of the night. So then it's not necessarily the dova echot, and that's the maram. The Ram is also mash. The Maram in Makis Tezayon Aleph on Teis Devir Maschel Vohoi Ika, in the end of his discussion there, that it could be the Ram's Chavona is that you over the Ashora only b'sefer halayla. In the Chutz Meduik like that in the Ram Per Gimel of Hilchos Mal V'Loiva Halacha Hey. V'im ish onihu umishkanoi dova shutzoch loy harizu mitzvah lahachzir lovet be'esh shutzoch loy. Immediately at the time that he needs it. Umachzir loy es tzakar b'layla k'dei lishon olov the whole, because he needs it the whole night. V'samachisha b'yoy the beginning of the day. K'lasas b'malachta shnem hotz t'zhu l'shavoy. Ovar v'loy heishiv loy kli hayoyim b'yoyim. He didn't give it back the whole day. Ukli alayla b'layla. over b'leisaseh. Shnemo leisishkavo be'avoitoi, leisishkavo avoite etzlacho, zuksus live, the whole night. So it could be that it's an aseh, a lav shekod ma'aseh. That the aseh is to give it back at night. And if he goes through the whole night and not doing it, he violates the law. So it's irrelevant for us over here because the Rambam only mentions over here, it doesn't mention the whole discussion about the interaction of the law v'aseh here, even though it's the opposite, or maybe, the mirror, according to the first shot of the aseh, the ashara, because this is not the place over here. He's only trying to prove that it's an aseh min haminyan, and that didn't quote the Makis that quotes the law of going into the house and taking the avoid or taking it in the shuk balkochai, and the aseh of hashavas avoid. The relationship between the law of returning the mashkin and the aseh, it's true there's a lav and aseh, but whether it's a lav shekobel aseh or aseh b'dov echol, whatever it is, but since there's no gemara about the relationship and there's no raya from that's a mitzvah minyan mitzvahs, there's no place for discussion over here in minyan mitzvahs. Now, let's just have a little akdoma to mitzvah reish. Mitzvah hamashlim mosayim. He should tzivonu lo seis schar sochir b'yoimoy lo yachreu b'yoimach. It sounds, we have to talk about it, as almost nisa say, if that's clear or not. V'omo yisale b'yoimoy titein schora v'din mitzvazo sheyes schir yoim goiva kol halayla v'schir layla goiva kol hayoim. There's a mitzvah of paying the sochir, and there's a law of not paying him. Ukfa hispoye mishpete mitzvah zo b'shleimus b'chi mitzvah. The ninth parak of Bava Mitzvah. B'shom hispoye shezeh mechuyev or zechoiva b'chol schir yoim ben goy ben Yisrael. There's a mitzvah of schar chochir by goy. Mitzvah say lefroy b'zmano. Here, the challenge that we're going to have is a dual challenge. Look at the Gemara in Sanhedrin about the relationship to Jews and goyim in various mitzvahs. The Gemara in Nun Zayin and Aleph talks about schar sochir, and see if the Gemara bears that out. Nun Zayin and Aleph. And then you have to see a Mishnah in Bava Mitzvah, Perek Test Mishnah Yud Beis. Get Toshev Yesh Boy Mishum B'Yom Titei Tzchoroi V'Ein Boy Mishum Loyol Solim Pula Socher Itro Ad Boiker. So I don't know. We have to know what the Ram got goy, but the Ram mentions goy also lois aseh. And you'll see, you try to find it in the Minyan Mitzvahs. He mentions it there also. But the Mishnah seem to talk about Ger Toshev. The Ram and Mishnah Torah also seem to talk about Ger Toshev. The problem is that the Rishonim, both Rashi in the Gemara on the Gemara in Bava Mitzvah, Kuf Yud Aleph Mud Beis, and the Chedusha Michosim Ridva claim there's a difference between the psukim in Parshas and Teres Kohanim, Parshas Kedoshim, and the psukim in Dvorim, in Mishnah Torah, and the Tosef of Kvega. And the question is, where does the Ram come from? How does the Ram say that there's only an aseh and not a lav? And is that the pshat in the Mishnah and what's going on? And Mitzvah Hashem will pick this up, and we'll try to move into the next Mishnah, maybe next mitzvah, maybe mitzvah after that. We'll see. Have a nice week, and atzloch alavo.